You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 128, DevilDriver, hosted by Dan Terry.
I was drinking buckets of margarita at the Mexican restaurant.
Josh Baldridge.
You want a quote on that piano? I'm going to shove up your ass and charge you $50K for it.
And Joseph Wren. Now, we're just laying into the double bass and seeing what happens. Presented by discussmetal.com. And if you pray for villains but you trust no one, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe, that is Dan, that is Josh. Are you ready to swing the dead?
Every single morning I wake up and I'm like, we're the dead. It's time for our daily swing. We go down to the park. I set them all down. It's really hard putting a corpse up on a swing. Some of them I have to put in the baby swing. And then I just kind of walk back and forth amongst the four swings, and I swing the dead.
I already feel like I am dead.
That's what that song's about, right?
Yeah, essentially, in a nutshell.
I was just trying to make sure because, I mean, it just seems like they saw me doing that, and that's why they named the song that.
It's like ditch digging 101.
DevilDriver is an American metal band. And, you know, I'm afraid to throw out any subgenres because a lot of them don't really apply to DevilDriver. They're kind of in this weird middle ground between a lot of different styles. And I don't necessarily know if that means they have a style of their own because they borrow influences from a lot of other bands, especially on the first album where they borrow heavily from Dez's old band, Coal Chamber, right down to his vocal delivery, which is largely the same as what you would experience on some Coal Chamber albums.
But they were still good.
They were still fantastic. I remember the first time I heard DevilDriver was on the 2003 Headbangers Ball compilation, where it was two discs. Disc 1 was all nu metal, and Disc 2 was all metalcore, death metal, and just the more extreme stuff that was starting to come out. It was like a passing of the torch type of release. And so that was the first time I heard DevilDriver, and it had the song I Could Care Less on it. It's either that or Swing of the Dead. I can't remember.
I think it was Swing of the Dead. They Molf might have been on there.
Can't remember which one it was. It's a shame I don't have like a personal computer in my pocket that I could just pull out and look up this kind of shit. But
no, it doesn't
Nobody
exist.
has time for that. So it was one of those two songs. They're
We're
both
gonna
great.
guess.
So.
They are both great. Before any of you out there give a shit for Headbangers Ball, that was a great source of finding out about metal when you were growing up.
It was basically the best source we had because MTV at that point had music videos, but we were starting to see a lot of daytime crap, and MTV2 had all the videos, but every night, Headbangers Ball, MTV1.
I give props to that show. I caught a lot of subgenres from that particular show. Just those 2 hours every night from 11 to 1.
Well, I remember hearing that song and not really knowing that it was Dez from Coal Chamber, and then I heard the song and I was like, that's definitely Dez from Coal Chamber. It's very, very obvious. Just because nobody enunciates quite like Dez does. And he's one of those guys that even when he was in Coal Chamber, I was like, dude, this guy's vocals are way too brutal for the band that he's in. And there's even times I feel that way about DevilDriver, which is a significantly heavier band than Coal Chamber.
But he sounds good, though.
Like, he sounds incredible.
It's not like his vocals were, anything crunchy or, that's like the type of vocal that's a Cookie Monster growl or any kind of shit. Like, you know what he's saying. Like, he enunciates. It's just so unique.
He used to be my definition of Cookie Monster vocal.
But you can understand, though. So, like, when I think of Cookie Monster vocal,
well.
When I think of Cookie Monster growl, like, for me, it's just that low monotone.
Like the Chris Barnes Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah, it's like that,
kind of
that kind of sound, which I appreciate, but I can appreciate him so much more just because, the enunciation, like, holy shit, I know what every word that I can learn the lyrics pretty quick with this guy.
It was largely because of his voice that I used to tell people that Coal Chamber was the heaviest band in the world. In my limited influence of what I knew was heavy, that was about as extreme as it got.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, they would have started, when we were in high school, if I'm thinking right.
They would have started on the tail end of us being in high school, DevilDriver, that is. Coal Chamber was around
I was going to say,
that.
I mean, so even, Coal Chamber definitely, but yeah, so... Yeah,
so I think Chamber
Music
period was like the last Coal Chamber album I'd heard.
I love Coal Chamber.
So yeah, DevilDriver was kind of exciting because I was like, oh shit, this is like way heavier, and now the vocals, somewhat match the music a lot better.
Well, it wasn't like a leftover Coal Chamber type of band. It wasn't like a continuation of it. It was, I think, in a sense, it may have started out, the first album kind of started out with that influence, but then they quickly got away and established their own sound and their own view.
And eventually became just straight, heavy thrash metal.
Pretty much.
Yeah, glorious, deep. baritone awesomeness.
Oh, don't worry, friends. We will talk thrash at the end of this discography.
Well, before we get to the Pale Horse disaster, I want to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, then you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher. So if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening. And now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
We love 5-star reviews here on Discography Discussion, and the reason we like them is because they help us get recommended in search results. You guys have heard me make this speech like 100 times now. So if you haven't left us a review, leave us a review. Leave us whatever kind of review you think we deserve, and we'll read it on the show. We'll give you a huge pat on the back if we ever meet you in real life. If you don't want a pat on the back or you have a sunburn, please let us know before meeting us in real life. Over on the old Gmail at the danandjoeshow@gmail.com, we got an email from Turnification, which if you didn't know, we've covered both of those bands, Tourniquet and Mortification. He asks us, where's the Extol episode? It is surprising to me that after all of the solid state and Christian bands discussed, that Extol has not come up. They are, in my opinion, one of the finest examples of that world, and a band I think deserves more credit regardless of ideology. I'd be curious to hear your perspective on their work. All I can really say is we are working on it. I can promise you that I have wanted to do an Extol episode for a long time. There's just so many bands to get to and just not enough time, but we will eventually cover everyone as long as we're able to. Also, I'd like to take this time to shout out our loyal Patreon subscribers, which include Alex Sander, Brian Dean, welcome to the fold, buddy, Jeffrey De Los Santos,
The Actual Mac,
Kiki Kuti, Do You Love Me,
I Do Love You,
Lance Allagood, Luis Fernando Pisano Escalante, and Zach Barr. You guys make it happen. You are the all-star team. You're the number one sluggers, and we love giving you guys extra content every week and letting you listen to the podcast early. So keep them coming. If you're a new Patreon subscriber at the $3 or more tier, you can look forward to us reading your name on future episodes of the podcast.
I'd also like to say thank you to all of our patrons, all of our supporters. You make this podcast happen, and we appreciate everything you do for us. Patrick Aspeland commented on a recent Patreon review, Draugsung means the song of Dragon. Dragon is a ghost of a dead fisherman lost at sea. When a sailor heard the song of Draugen, he knew he was going to die. The language is Norwegian, it seems.
That is Patrick Aspeland from Finland.
So I'm going to go with him on that one.
He knows some shit. He's always popping in on my messenger, letting me know what I'm wrong about, which I love.
You don't got to be all Jeff Kane about it.
Well, Jeff is our resident expert on European stuff and Scandinavian stuff. So,
Jeff, what's your opinion?
We might hear. We heard from Jeff last week. So
how you doing?
We might hear about him, we might hear about him on the news. But
you want to fix that?
We may hear.
You
from him
want to
sooner
fix
than
that before we go too far?
You won't be hearing about Jeff's whereabouts ever.
You heard from Jeff on the last episode, and you may hear from him in the future. Just depends on how Josh is feeling that day.
Essentially, that's it.
Pretty much how it rolls.
2003, DevilDriver.
DevilDriver. What a cool name. What a unique name.
Driving the devil.
Wherever he wants to go.
Wherever he wants to go. That's right.
If it was just a few years later, they would just be called the Devil's Uber.
That's not as cool.
What are you talking about? That's amazing.
The Devil's Uber?
Well, whenever they first started off, they were called Death Ride.
Which was my favorite, but unfortunately that didn't stick.
Yeah, it was
copyright.
some kind of copyright claim.
Damn you lawyers.
So they just changed it to DevilDriver, which I thought was kind of funny because it's so similar. You could definitely see how they got there.
Just going to make a few minor changes to the band name.
It's really weird how DevilDriver came about because Dez was done with Coal Chamber after some sort of incident on stage. He moved from Orange County, California to Santa Barbara and just started having barbecues. I'm not making this up. This is documented that he held a bunch of barbecues and invited a bunch of musicians over to jam with him while they ate barbecue. This is starting to sound a little bit like a Burton C. Bell from Fear Factory situation. So he meets the guys from DevilDriver. They get together. They're like, we want to do something heavy. We want to do something kind of thrash, kind of death metal, kind of metalcore. How do we do this? And that's how we get the first DevilDriver album.
It does. Those pork steaks are really good. Is that Tim's recipe?
You know what's funny? Because after you mentioned it, there were actually quite a few bands from that California scene who got together just from fucking drinking bitches and barbecues.
Well, it's the way to find musicians.
It's like the thing to do out in California. Apparently, is just get drunk and have barbecue, and then hey, we'll throw a band together.
I think this is definitely Burton C. Bell's recipe for pork steaks. Because you're gonna think it's like, hey man, what's going on? Oh hey Des, what's going on? Hey, not too much. You want to come over and have some pork steaks with me?
Hey dude, is Tim gonna be there?
Well, I guess. I mean, it's kind of a drive though. And, I don't really want to make a new metal. Oh, I don't want to make new metal either.
Yeah, totally no new metal.
Yeah,
what is that?
No
what is that? Metal. I'm trying to get away from that scene.
I'm trying to get away from it totally. But on to more important matters. I mean, these pork steaks are not going to eat themselves.
So eat up, boys.
You gonna come over or what?
And then bam.
And the guy's like, I don't
there.
know. I could care less. And then we have DevilDriver. This first DevilDriver album is very good at being like, this is the new norm for Dez. We are no longer in new metal territory. Kind of.
Ish.
The biggest thing is that Dez has a very unique vocal style. He has a very unique vocal pattern. He's instantly recognizable, as we discussed in the intro. So what you get with the first DevilDriver album is it's tagged largely on most sites as groove metal, and I'm gonna challenge that a little bit because I think that they were basically playing heavy thrash. That wasn't necessarily breakneck speed. It was tuned down, but it wasn't quite heavy enough to be death metal. This is not Cannibal Corpse. This is actually like memorable riffs, and I think that's where the groove metal part comes in. A lot of the times, a band will be labeled as groove metal because their riffs are just good. Like they're memorable.
It's like a hybrid title.
And a hybrid's kind of a good way to look at it. It's a hybrid of multiple styles. There's a little bit of death metal. There's a little bit of hardcore. There's a little bit of thrash metal. And then you've got Dez doing his thing over top of it, which leads to some really weird vocal patterns that he does.
In this album.
I love the way he sounds like he's smiling. But if you watch him perform, he's not smiling.
No.
He's very intense. He's very much in control of the stage. But when I listen to his vocals, the way he presents it, it sounds like he's smiling the whole time. Everything, it's not just it's we.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's funny the type of liberties he takes with the vocals. So on I Could Care Less, which was one of their big singles, he actually does a little bit of a clean vocal, and it's the closest we ever get to him doing that on a DevilDriver record. Because he starts it off with, every time you speak my name, my name. The image, it just burns away. And then it's funny because that's like as close to Cold Chamber as we're going to get. And he just goes into this Cookie Monster growl. It's like, if you'll excuse me, I'm just really not myself. And I just love it because the band's called DevilDriver, and they sound evil as fuck. I love how he's just like, I could care less. I could care less about all the shit that you have going on. I love it. I love all of it. I love how melodic that song is and how catchy and how hooky it is. And I feel largely the same way about Swingin' the Dead. There's another song that really stands out to me, and it's called I Dreamed I Died. And it's probably the most nu metal song on the record because he just does that Cold Chamber thing where he just like dun 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 with the vocal style. And I love at the end of it where he's talking about being like judged, I guess, after dying, and the voice says, "Damn son, you done good. You done every single thing that you could." It's like so fucking hilarious, but it's awesome. It's cheesy but effective in a way that I can't really describe, and it's just so much fun to listen to. I probably listened to that song on repeat like 5 or 6 times because I was just like, this is fucking hilarious.
I'm laughing over here because Dan and I have not talked all week, and my notes, I specifically mentioned that song as being my favorite, and I mentioned the same fucking thing. So my note on that album is damn near word for word with what Dan was gonna say. So it is what it is.
So
I like it.
I guess what we have to say about the first DevilDriver album is, damn boy, you done good.
That's right.
You done every single thing that you could.
It's a good first album for a new band who's not a leftover band, if that makes sense. Like, this isn't Cold Chamber Part 2. This isn't, this the same guys just mixing out other musicians and continuing on under a different name.
It feels very, very fresh.
Yes.
Especially for 2003, because there were a lot of bands out there that sounded like this, but this was their, they differentiated themselves from like a Lamb of God or even a Slipknot or bands or an As I Lay Dying or Kill Switch. Like, they have their own unique sound, and I think Dez is largely responsible for that. I think if they'd had a different vocalist, I think they would have just started sounding like every other band
else.
Which unfortunately is what we're going to start moving into with their next release.
2005, The Fury of Our Maker's Hand.
Cool title.
Really cool title.
Yeah, I mean, I think this band in general has really cool lyric content and really cool song meanings and song titles. I mean, it's kind of refreshing for what's out there at the time.
For being a quote-unquote evil band.
Yeah.
That has pictures of the devil up on stage and stuff while they're playing, and there's pentagrams everywhere, and it's all super evil or whatever. You read the lyrics, and you're just like, actually, it's really not. Dez seems like a really cool dude that I'd love to have pork steaks with sometime.
Exactly. That man can barbecue, I'm in.
Yeah, I'm over in a heartbeat. The Fury of Our Maker's Hand sees Dez moving away from the coal chamber vocal style and goes for a much more modern metal sound.
A snarl, if you will.
Yes, and he has the voice for it 100%. The music also has been beefed up to match. The riffs are heavier. The blasting on the drums is much faster, much more aggressive. There is actually real groove in here. So this is one of the first records that I would be comfortable calling groove metal.
Quote unquote.
Quote unquote, because I get a very different picture in my mind when people say groove metal. I just think Pantera. And this doesn't really sound like Pantera, but maybe it does cosmetically.
What? This isn't Cowboys from Hell?
Not exactly. They have really good catchy hooks. However, this album is lacking a song like Swing in the Dead or a I Could Care Less or I Dream I Died, like we talked about on the first album. These songs are really good. They're intricate. They're fun, but they don't really have a standout single.
No, you're just kind of just status quo, I think, at this point with this album.
I definitely agree.
It's not like I said, it's not a bad thing. Like, it's a good sounding record, but it's nothing that's like standing out for me. It's nothing that's, wow, that's pretty good. Like, I'm excited for more from these guys. It's like, okay, this is a good album. What else can you do for me?
I don't think his vocals are any different than anything he's ever done.
Not to this point, I don't think. It's
the only
different.
thing that really sounds somewhat different is that this album came out in 2005, and we've talked about this before. This is when mainstream metal albums started to be fully recorded digitally, and I just don't think they knew how to do it yet.
Okay, I'm going to agree with that. We've discussed that before on other podcasts about that. It's just unfortunate with the metal scene in general with recording.
I think vocally he is different, or at least he's starting to become different.
Trying to distance himself from the coal chamber sound.
Yeah, so his rhythmic delivery is a little different. His voice doesn't sound as, I don't know what the word is, but it doesn't sound as cheesy as it did on the first DevilDriver album or the way it sounded in Coal Chamber.
Is that really a bad thing, though?
No, not necessarily.
The cheesiness wasn't a bad thing. I mean, I just described, on the first album how the cheesiness was my favorite part of the whole thing. On this, he goes for a more straight-ahead, kind of no bullshit sort of approach. And I understand how on paper that's a good thing.
I think if he continues the cheesiness from the first album all the way through, this band would get old quick.
People are just like, oh, it's Dez's new band, DevilDriver, and they're evil or whatever, and super cheesy.
Oh, cool, yeah, all right, next. Like,
this was their first stab at like, we're going to go on tour with metal bands.
Yeah, we're going to try and be legitimate, our own, stand on our own 2 feet. We're not, again, it's not a leftover from Coal Chamber. It's not, dudes forming a band.
It's a birthing pain from the sound of the first album.
It's the stereotype. Second album, not as good as the first. Okay, but we're still here. What else you got?
See, and I think it continues into the next album. For me, is the same way with that.
2007, The Last Kind Words.
The Last Kind Words was really cool, I thought, because it was probably their most melodic.
Yeah, it's the beginning of some slower riffs, a little more, not just starting out from second one with just, double bass, snaring in your face. Kind of have
all
some
that's there,
slow,
but
it doesn't start out from second one. You have some leads. You start hearing some lead guitars in there, a little different sound. And he sounds better in vocals too.
They start going for a more traditional metal sound here, and I'm okay with that because they still have everything that you like about DevilDriver. If your favorite thing about them is that they're heavy and they're fast, like that's probably really the only two things you need to be in a good metal band is be heavy and fast. And they definitely have mastered that on their previous 2 records. So on this one, they're going to actually start writing more interesting songs that stick out. Because I had mentioned that on The Fury, that they really didn't have interesting songs. They didn't have a standout single. They were just like, look at what we can do now. This album is that way, but with much more thought put into the actual songwriting. The riffs are catchier, they're hookier. The guitar play is more intricate, it's more technical. Whereas the first two DevilDriver albums are a little bit more basic in their approach. This one went to mix that heaviness with some actual complexity and technicality. Dez's vocals sound even more different than they did before. He definitely still sounds like himself. I'm not trying to say that he doesn't sound like himself, but he is playing more into the style now.
This album begins to excite me because it's heading in the direction, like you said, more of a traditional metal sound. And so, not that I don't like, I mean, I loved Cold Chamber growing up. The first few albums of this band were good, but like everyone knows, I'm more of that traditional metal, thrash metal guy. So at this album going forward, you start to meld in some of that influence and start to sound that. So this album is not my favorite, but I got excited listening to this album because I can see the direction that they're going, or at least if they were wanting to go that direction, they're certainly achieving that.
This is an example of the vibe of DevilDriver. On paper, this sounds like Lamb of God, but it's DevilDriver. This sounds like Slipknot with half the members and Dez instead of Corey Taylor. But this is DevilDriver.
Sign me up.
It doesn't sound like they're ripping off other bands or just doing the same thing but making it cosmetically different. This vibe, I think the only word I can use is it's Sepultura, it's Soulfly, it's Max Cavalera. It doesn't matter what band he's in, it sounds like him. This band sounds like DevilDriver right now.
It sounds like metal, Joe.
Heavy as fuck metal, Josh.
I like it. I'm a traditional guitar solo guy, so I like the solos, I like leads, I like harmonics. And so this shit's in here, so when it gets mixed in with it, I get excited about the sound direction that they're taking this. And my favorite album is the next one.
Are we going to that?
I mean, I don't know. Dan, there's not too much else to say about this album.
That's the problem whenever you have a band like DevilDriver that's just pretty much completely solid.
Yeah.
It's like, I listened to it, I liked it. They didn't fuck up anywhere.
What do we say? Like, who's the bar for that? It's very Slayer-like. It's, you know what you're getting. It sounds pretty
but it's
good.
better than Slayer because there's way more diversity in the songs.
I don't disagree, but
I think this is the first DevilDriver album where almost all the songs sound different.
2009, Pray for Villains.
Wait, we're praying for the villains now?
Yeah, because they're about to get murdered.
So the devil's going to murder the villains. What a twist. I guess it makes sense, though, right? If the devil's lying, he's like, yeah, be a villain for me, work for me, and then I kill you. What's more evil than that?
Choose your eternity.
Pray for Villains is largely just like The Last Kind Words, but more aggressive. Like they doubled down on the melody on The Last Kind Words.
I wasn't sure you were going. I can see where you're going with this.
And this one, they're kind of beefing up like the heavier DevilDriver elements of it.
This is the first album that when listening through them that I was like, okay, I categorize this as a straight metal album. Like this is the first metal-esque album in my opinion.
I think the biggest issue, and it's not even an issue, but the band is starting to sound very samey. They're just, it's like Joe often says about a lot of bands, it's just the next DevilDriver album.
And I have no problem with that if what you want is a new album by DevilDriver. The challenge is, how long is that going to be okay? At what point are you going to get bored with the same thing? But I think this band changes just enough to keep the same vibe, but give you something more, something additional.
Sure.
It's not like, I'll use Godsmack as an example.
It
took them 3 albums to bring the tempo up. DevilDriver had the groove the whole time. Now we're just laying into the double bass and seeing what happens. It's kind of like the second album by Tantric. I think it was a Guitar One interview where the guitarist said, I told him to just lay into the double bass on this album. And it just felt like more of the same vibe, but there was more to it. It was more interesting because it wasn't just so straight, if that makes sense.
Well, let me ask you this. If this album repeated itself for the next 4 albums or 3 albums, would you get bored with it? Or is there enough diversity that you would listen to them more than once?
I think that there's enough diversity in the overall sound. Because like I said, these songs don't all sound the same, but the overall sound is the same. So I think it's kind of a mood thing. If you're in the mood to listen to DevilDriver, you can pretty much grab almost any of their releases and be happy. And I would say that's true of The Last Kind Words on. I think the first 2 records definitely evoke a different mood. than what you're going to get with the more complex metal stuff, because I guess with the first two records, I just considered DevilDriver to be a band that kind of came from the new metal scene that was trying to modernize. Whereas everything from Last Kind Words on sounds like a legitimate metal band coming up with new material.
This does sound like a more mainstream album from going forward. I agree with that.
And I'm okay with that because they're taking a decidedly metal approach to their songwriting, as I've said previously. The songs have a lot more melody in them instead of it being a little bit more basic like it was in the past, where you'd have heavy part, melodic part, heavy part, melodic part. Being able to blend those styles seamlessly together so that you can be absolutely melodic but absolutely crushing at the same time.
Do you guys think fans of Cold Chamber, like their fans listening to this, do you think that they would be in for this kind of style? Like, do you think this is close enough to Cold Chamber fans that they would follow this band?
I think most fans of Cold Chamber are actually fans of Dez, so they would follow for that reason. But I don't think anybody that's truly into the sound of Cold Chamber would listen to Pray for Villains or even the next album, Beast, and say, yeah, I like this. Because it definitely doesn't have the same vibe. This is more of a heavy metal, where Cold Chamber is one of the definitive new metal sounding bands.
I think that, okay, this podcast isn't about Cold Chamber, it's about DevilDriver, but I feel like I have to mention that Cold Chamber, all of the Cold Chamber albums sounded way different than each other. And I never knew if that was them being innovative or them not knowing what they wanted to do.
I think it's more that.
Or there was just like too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. Because every Cold Chamber album sounded different. And it's kind of interesting to see Dez come into DevilDriver and then carve out a really consistent sound. And it makes me wonder if this was his goal all along, like if he kind of had this vision even back in Cold Chamber that I just want to be a metal singer in a metal band, and DevilDriver was just kind of his realization of that. I think largely it's true, because whenever we get to Beast in 2011, again, it's almost like a step up. It's a better perfection of that sound. Instead of always trying to change, they're trying to do what they do better. And with 2011's Beast, you get better than Pray for Villains.
In a sense of what? Just overall production, the song quality, I mean, everything?
Song quality, intensity level, passion level. It always sounds fresh when you hear DevilDriver. It doesn't get super old for me. I kind of enjoy it from beginning to end until it starts to get weird.
I think that the middle of discography, or the discussion for this one, is these middle albums sound good, but each album is a little bit better than the previous album. I think at this point, I don't know, to maybe this album or maybe the next album, this is kind of the last of this type of sound before they take a different approach, maybe, or a different direction. Not that it's bad. I enjoyed this album. It does, for me, sound like the two previous albums, but yeah, there's a better quality there. There's a step up in production. It's a little more technical, a little more tight. Lyrical content's a little better.
Well, I think they had moved from being super heavy to being super melodic, and now they're starting to kind of go up the hill again.
Yeah, there's a progression.
Being more brutal overall.
I think Dez just said it best. You get what you came for.
Every time.
I mean, it's a fair enough quote.
I think on Beast, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's Beast. It's heavy. It's intense. It's got a lot of melodic death metal influences in it, which I really love. Which, whenever we get around to talking about the Black Dahlia murder, I'll be in heaven.
Spoilers.
But back on to DevilDriver, I liked Beast. I liked The Last Kind Words. I liked Pray for Villains. I liked all that stuff. However, there's a lot of other bands that I listen to that are like that maybe do it a little bit better. It's not even to say that DevilDriver's bad. It's just that after a while, whenever Dez stopped singing like he did in Cold Chamber on the first DevilDriver album, by this point, he's just a metal singer.
They get lost in the shuffle, sort of.
A little bit, yeah. He's starting to sound more generic. He still sounds like Dez, and he doesn't sound bad. I'm not criticizing his performance at all. His performance is spot on. It's exactly what it needs to be. It does the job. However, if your claim to fame is having a notable vocalist, it's kind of unfortunate that he's really only recognizable as the guy from Cold Chamber on maybe the first two DevilDriver records. And from there, he's basically sounds like a lot of other metal singers from that time. That's a criticism, but not really, because I still like the way he sounds. I still like the way he does everything. But it doesn't help that at this time there were a lot of bands out there playing a very similar style. Some better, some worse, and sometimes it can get lost in the shuffle.
He likes money.
I like money.
He loves money.
Hey, Dan, can I have some money?
Yeah, dude, just wait by the mailbox and wait for my letter that I sent that was full of money to come.
Patreon.com/discussmetal.
And if it's not there in like a couple of days,
Come see me.
Just wait longer.
Hit me up. I'll let you know where it's at.
2013, Winter Kills.
This is another one again where I just feel like it's the same as the previous. I don't think this one was as good. I feel like this is a step down just a little bit.
This is the point in the discography where you're tired of the same thing.
Yeah, I guess a little bit. I think wasn't Dan, and Dan will know this better, isn't there wasn't there some lineup changes either before this album or right after this album? And I can't remember exactly when looking up some of the stuff, but I don't know. At this point, it's not bad. It doesn't, there's not any kind of song where you listen to it and it's like, this sounds like crap. Like the production's not bad. It's just, it starts to sound repetitive some. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but, if I'm going to listen to this band for, say, where I'm driving around or something like that, I'm probably going to be listening to some of the earlier stuff, maybe the first few albums of this era. It's it's repetitive after a little bit.
There weren't significant lineup changes until after this album was released.
Okay, I couldn't remember if it was before or after.
One of the guitarists went off to join Bad Wolves,
Yeah.
which is a huge step down in my opinion.
Yes, because what are they doing now?
Well, I mean, they do all kinds of stuff, making money that we're not. They went on a little bit of a hiatus here because Coal Chamber essentially reunited. They did that whole, it's been a long time, guys. We're going to get together. We're going to play some Coal Chamber songs.
And they did, and it sounded exactly like Coal Chamber.
It did. It was great. And then I think that more or less ended up falling apart as everybody remembered why they didn't like working with each other in the first place. So back in 2016, Dez gets some other guys, I assume over some pork steaks, and they put out an album in 2016 called Trust No One.
Great album cover, by the way.
Oh, fantastic album cover. It definitely has the traditional metal look to it. The DevilDriver font looks great on it. We're not really artwork critics, but this was definitely like top tier stuff. And musically, this sounded fresh as fuck.
Yes, my favorite album by a little bit, but still my favorite album. Because again, this sounds the most traditional metal for my taste. You got twin guitars, there's all sorts of good leads. It's not, double bass pedal in your face, a gazillion beats per second. There's tempo changes. I mean, even in his in his vocals, there's not, it's, they're up and down. There's tempo changes in his vocals. It's just very complete from the last couple of albums and sounds significantly different.
Dez sounds a lot more pissed off. It's renewed. He's got fresh blood in the band. They are very refreshing to hear. The drumming is some of the most aggressive I've heard. I love the way the drums sound on this record.
I do too.
The guitar work is rooted more in traditional metal with like way better lead work.
Oh, I got so excited.
Really good solos, just crushingly devastating, heavier breakdowns and stuff. Fantastic release.
Yep.
Really, really, really ended on not ended. They're not ended. They're
no. They're still.
I'm gonna get to that in a little bit. That DevilDriver is not done.
They are still rolling and trucking along.
They actually just went on tour with a band that a lot of people would refer to as Static X. I'm still not convinced. I'm not interested in seeing ex-members of Static X stand up there with some asshole with a Wayne Static
cash grab.
Yeah, fucking Wayne Static mask on and trying to sing these songs. However, between the Static X stuff and now, or in 2016, in 2018 they put out an album called Outlaws Till the End Volume 1. I have a pretty strong no EP rule. We're having a technical difficulty here.
Yeah, my fucking mic just fell right off. So I'm just going to hold it and talk to you guys.
Hey, guys. Welcome to...
I got to lean in.
Welcome to Josh's Hour of Power. How are you guys doing tonight?
Fuck it. I'm going to finish this. Shit standing up, holding the mic.
Now you know why Mark Maron has a, What the Fuck starring Mark Maron.
I get it now.
Just because of stuff like this.
We're almost done. Just fucking power through it.
Okay, we can pick up where we left off.
Yes, Outlaws Till the End, Volume 1.
Dan said something about I have a no EP rule.
I have a very strong no EP rule. I don't know what the fuck to do with cover albums.
I don't either. Like, I didn't realize it was a cover album until like 2 songs in. I'm like, wait a minute.
This sounds way fucking different.
I know. I know this song sounds familiar. So then doing some research and having some friends growing up who were country fanatics, I'm like, I fucking knew it. Cover albums are hit or miss. Like, some bands can take a song of a completely different genre, make it their own, and it sounds fucking great. Other bands that try to do that falls flat on their face, and it just butchers this shit to hell. As someone who knows the original music from this, it's not horrible, but it's not for me. Like, it's not, there's a lot of old country music on there. A lot of Hank Williams Jr. They have a lot of old-timey country music. That's not my style. It's not for me. I can appreciate that they went out and tried it. I mean, I have no idea what possessed them to even do an album like that. It's just not, it was just an album that I I can't get into. It's just like Dan's like, how do you classify the cover albums in someone's discography? Like, do you cover it? Do you not cover it? Because it's not their shit. It's their rendition of it.
I thought their cover of Ghost Riders in the Sky was pretty cool.
It's not bad. Again, that song in particular is not bad, but this entire album, I mean, even Metallica on their Garage, I mean, they had some songs that was like, all right, it's not bad, but it's not great. I think every band that does a cover like that's like that.
I'm going to go ahead and mention the Sail cover from Winter Kills that we kind of snuck over. Thank you. I don't think it's a bad thing when a band does a cover that's outside their genre, but there's a huge difference between Metallica doing Motorhead, Blitzkrieg, Free Speech for the Dumb, because those are all within the punk genre that influenced thrash metal. It might be a little different, though, when they start doing Loverman and Tuesday's Gone.
That's fine. They threw that in the end. It was okay. But man, did Loverman go on forever.
I don't think this is a bad album. If they want to do a cover album, that's fine. Powerman 5000 had a really cool cover album a few years ago called Copies, Clones, and Replicants, where they did a lot of 80s Britpop and David Bowie and Van Halen. I think if you do it well, if you actually take the time to record the songs and put the same effort, or at least a decent level of effort into it so that it doesn't just sound like what it is, I think it's entertaining to listen to a band say these are our influences, but it's not necessarily what I'm looking for in a new release. I would take this alongside a new album, please, if you don't mind.
Is it influences, though? Like, I can't find any quotes or anything from any of them saying that, these are songs or bands or something that influenced us. Like, most covers, it's a song they loved growing up or something that influenced them, or maybe they, it was a cool riff that they loved playing, so they try to do their own variety. Like, I can't find information on why this. Like, what's the inspiration behind this particular list of songs?
I think Dez just liked old country songs.
Maybe. It's not
a lot of
bad.
fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool in the respect that every band should be able to put out material if they have cover songs or shit like that they were influenced growing up. I don't have a problem with that. But I feel like if you're gonna do that, it needs to at least somewhat cater to your fans. Like, I guess it's hard for me to get on board with this kind of stuff because I don't like country at all. I never have.
Isn't the mindset that metal fans are the same fans as outlaw country? Just like Korn back with Family Values said, hip-hop and nu metal fans are the same. And They weren't entirely off base. I know a lot of people that love nu metal listen to Rage Against the Machine and listen to classic.
Well, there's a commonality rebellion message there. So yeah, I can see the correlation between the two. I mean, that old-timey country is kind of that your Johnny Cash's, Hank Williams, like that kind of stuff is, if for the time and the style and the genre those kind of artists were like they would be considered the metal-esque of country, if that makes sense. Like, they're the kind of the fuck you to the mainstream artistry. So I can see why a metal band or, someone in that genre would be influenced by that type of artist in that genre.
To quote Samuel L. Jackson in the movie Jurassic Park, hold on to your butts.
Yes!
Because in 2019, DevilDriver's going to drop a double album.
And I think it's going to be good.
It's not even going to be a double album. It's going to be a double concept album.
I like concept albums.
This is either going to be great or it's going to be the worst mistake they ever made.
And I was just going to say, that's the one thing about concept albums. They're either fucking fantastic or it's going to fall on its face.
I have on good authority that the theme of the album is going to be the loss of personal freedoms that people have. They're going to explore that. That's all the information I have. But whenever this album comes out, you can be sure that we will do a Patreon episode on it.
Oh, for sure.
So get your dollars ready, gents. And ladies. It's not just a gent thing.
That's right. Anybody. Your dog can subscribe if you really want them to.
Final thoughts on DevilDriver. Dan.
DevilDriver's a badass metal band that you should check out. You don't have to check out every release. They're going to impress you more or less on each one that they do. Like a Slayer, they're completely solid, meaning if you like one album, you're probably going to like the rest of them, with maybe the exception of the first two. DevilDriver's one of my favorite bands because they have all the basic concepts down. They're heavy, they're melodic, they're fast. There's always a double bass going. There's always a cool guitar solo. There's always a memorable riff. What else can you ask for from a metal band?
Not a whole hell of a lot.
Josh, what about you?
I loved DevilDriver. No, seriously. It's a good band. It's a solid band. It's a great band to listen to from album 1 to the last album, not including the cover album. I don't count that. There are 7 albums. They're solid from song 1 to the last song in each album. There's not much of a dip in production. There's not a downside really to these albums. There's not a, oh, what the fuck were they thinking moment. They're solid. It's a solid band. There's not a whole lot you can criticize from this group. They're technical. They sound great. Good riffs, good leads. He can snarl. He can sing. Just a great band to listen to. Very metal. So listen to them. If you're not, you're missing out. You really are.
I think if your first exposure to DevilDriver was the fact that Dez from Cold Chamber was the lead singer, you have a jaded opinion that everything Dez does is great. There are those of us that have the same opinion about Max Cavalera. This is not a bad thing when everything that comes out is great. And I think all the albums from DevilDriver are great heavy metal albums. I don't think they are above anything anyone else has done. I don't think I would put DevilDriver on a top 10 list somewhere for best riff, best song, best lead vocalist, although Dez could probably get pretty high in the standings for that one. But I think you should be listening to DevilDriver if you love heavy metal, if you love thrash. I'd even go as far to say that most metalcore fans should be listening to this, but probably didn't because the vocals didn't sound the same as what they were expecting. Dan, what's your album of the week?
My album of the week, I've been trying to get kind of away from away from some of this crazy metal stuff, and I've gone super indie hardcore type stuff. So I've been listening to Horse the Band and their album The Mechanical Hand.
Josh, what about you?
I'm going to totally do a 180 and surprise the fuck out of everybody. My album of the week is Weird Al Yankovic's Off the Deep End.
Holy shit.
I've been listening to Weird Al.
Can't watch this.
Yeah, I don't even know what. So I did my brush up on DevilDriver, and then for whatever reason on a road trip for work, I had a song in my head from Weird Al, and then before I know it, I was listening to all of his old shit, actually everything he has, and I listened to that album probably 3 times this week.
I think if Jeff was here, he would ask you if you're a fan of the White Stuff.
Yes. Huh? Yes, I am.
Weird Al's band, maybe the most diverse band ever.
Yeah, I mean, no shit. They do everything from rap, rock, punk, metal, grunge.
Polka metal.
Polka. No shit. Maybe one day we can cover Weird Al.
It is not this day.
No. But if you guys want to, send us your emails.
My album of the week is the Freddy vs. Jason soundtrack, because when you're listening to DevilDriver and you get nothing but heavy metal that you love, you pop in a compilation of heavy metal that you love. There is not a bad song on that particular soundtrack.
Have you guys ever been wondering, how come you guys haven't covered my favorite band yet? I want to hear what you guys have to say about my favorite band.
I have, Dan. Please tell me more.
There's a couple of ways you can do that, Josh. You can go to discussmetal.com. You can find out all of the list of bands that we've talked about already on the show. Sometimes people think we haven't talked about a band and they suggest it only to discover that we already did do an episode on that band. If you're positive, 100% sure that we haven't, you can send us an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/discography discussion. While you're there, you can join the Facebook official group for Discography Discussion. Send us a request to join, and I will approve you. And then you can get in and see our meme wars and all the stuff that we share that we may not necessarily share on the main page. It's an exclusive thing. If you're also into exclusive things, you can check us out on Discord. We have our own server there. There's a link in the show notes. If you click on the link, we will add you to our Discord server, and you can chat with us in real time there. You can also reach out to us on Twitter at DiscussMetal, or to Joe and I, respectively, at DiscussMetalDan or at DiscussMetalJoe.
Thanks, Dan. That's really great stuff.
And on that note, this has been episode 128 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion, and please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Money, 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 money.
Money, good.
Change the channel and I'll break your fingers.